Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Truth Wanted, the live call-in show where we talk about what people believe and why every Friday at 7 p.m. Central Time. I'm your host, Objectively Dan, and every week I have a special guest join me on the show. This week's special guest is Dave Farina, aka Professor Dave from YouTube. Dave, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and so Dave is a science communicator on YouTube. He makes a lot of videos about, you just cover a lot of different topics. Your specialty is chemistry, I'd say. I think you'd say that as well.
Yeah.
And you're just a science guy all around. And you just hit 1 million subscribers this
I
week.
did.
So congratulations to that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what got you interested in doing science education on YouTube?
Wow, it's a long story. To be honest, I'd always been a musician, and throughout my 20s, I was working towards being a musician. And the way I would support myself would be to tutor and substitute teach. And then I got one teaching job at a trade university teaching organic chemistry. So I was doing that for a few years, and then I was looking for a way to make some passive income so that when I would go out on tour with my band, I could still be generating income. And so I had the idea of a YouTube channel, and I basically just put up my OChem lectures just from memory, the same ones that I had delivered in class. And so I made a channel with a little branding and a theme song, put up my OChem lectures, and I was actually shocked at how well they were received. So I started making general chemistry tutorials with animation and things like that. And again, the reception was great. So I just got, it was a very unexpected thing, but I saw that it was working, that it was a path towards an interesting new kind of career for myself. So I really dug into it. And for the past 4.5 years, I've been working relentlessly at it, going through every topic that I have any business explaining, now moving on to other topics, hiring writers with expertise to help me, make content in still more topics. And the end goal is to just cover every academic subject known to man.
Heck yeah.
Make the best, make really the best quality educational tutorials for high school and undergraduate students, as well as the general public, ideally, though they don't really seem to be watching too much right now. But that's the product that I want to create, and that's what one of the things I want to contribute to the world.
That's sad to hear, because you'd think that now is the time more than ever that you'd want to be looking at that kind of stuff. I gotta say, from my perspective, I'm not in that community, but there's drama in the makeup YouTube community. There's drama in the YouTube skeptic community. There's drama in lots of communities. When I look at the science education side, it's you guys seem all right. I don't know what goes on between, your DMs, but it seems like you're trying to do good stuff.
It's a great community too. I mean, we have conferences and stuff, and name almost any educational YouTuber. I probably know them personally. And we're all quite friendly. It's not, we have a really great community. We all have our trolls to varying degrees. I get a lot of trolls because I do debunking content. So I deal with 100 trolls a day, but before I did any debunking, almost never. I really got almost no nasty comments. Now I get a couple hundred a day, but it just used to be students that are trying to pass a test. That's why there's not a lot of drama, because it's a little bit boring for most people. They don't really want to know some highly esoteric knowledge that a sophomore undergrad needs to know to pass an organic chemistry test. It's just not really of interest to them. But now I've unleashed floodgates, and it's so bad now that I'm just well, what's the point in stopping? I'm just going to debunk everything I possibly can now.
So. Yeah, and I want to talk to you about that, because we like debunking on this show. We do quite a bit of it. We like talking about it. It seems that your favorite is the flat Earth stuff. It seems like that's what gets you the biggest kick, right?
Well, it definitely gets me the most views because it's hilarious. But it's not really my favorite. It's just that's what got me into it. So
I gotcha.
What happened was I was making an astronomy playlist with basic astronomy 101 learning objectives, and at the end of the playlist, just for a little bit of fun, I debunked flat Earth and I debunked astrology. Just two little addendum tutorials, and I didn't look into flat Earth at all. I just heard that there were people who think the Earth is flat, so I made a video about how we know it's round. But that one shot to the #1 search result for the flat Earth keyword on the day after it was released. So flat Earthers pounced on it because it was just something new for them to talk about. And so this one channel, I'm not even going to name them because I don't want to give them the publicity, a prominent flat Earth channel made this like 3.5 hour live stream thinking they were like tearing apart my video. And they were really, really insulting to me. And I'm a vindictive person. So I just made a 45-minute video just annihilating everything that they said in that live stream. And that video is now my highest viewed video on my channel by a lot. It's got like over 4 million views. And so I made a few more on flat Earth, but then, there's not that much to talk about. Like I kind of debunked everything any flat earther has ever said. So I moved on to a bunch of other stuff. Creationism and alternate cosmologies is something that's rampant on the internet right now. I hope to address many more areas of pseudoscience and deconstruct them as much as I can.
Yeah, I've gotten a couple calls about alternative cosmologies, and there's one in particular that somebody sent in about actually electric universe theory was one of them, a plasma universe, that stuff. And I found it was difficult for me to like look at this stuff and then be like, okay, can I talk about this on the show? Because the wrongness is like really deep and really like there's a lot to the wrongness, so much that it's like you have to explain basic fundamentals about physics. I feel like out of all the debunking stuff, that can be the hardest to talk about with people because there's so much that goes into that conversation, right?
Yeah, you need basic physics knowledge to not even in-depth physics knowledge, but you do need basic physics knowledge to debunk it. So and you have to sort of be able to navigate this weird world of all these little cults and what they all say. Because I did debunk the electric universe, and then I got a lot of people descending on that, saying like, what about this? What about this? And like referencing all these other little flavors, all these other little cult channels that all say something slightly different. Some of them are based on science that was once legitimate but has now been discredited like 40 or 50 years ago. Some of it is just based on complete fantasy. This guy named Velikovsky in the 50s who said that like Venus was a comet that came out of Jupiter and the Earth used to orbit Saturn, and all of this like objectively ridiculous mystical stuff like magic lightning bolts in space. And so like that's like the crazier part. But then they all just each camp sort of takes some pre-existing thing and then builds their own little layer on it. We think the sun works like this, right? The sun doesn't work the way physicists say it does. That's dumb. It works this other way. That's just like objectively ridiculous. But they all have like their different. That's kind of the funniest thing about it is they each have their own thing and they're all contradictory, but they're all friends because they're all like anti-establishment, narratives. The only common thread is that they all agree that physicists are wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's sort of what ensnares the suggestible viewer. The power of an anti-establishment narrative is very formidable. People really want to believe that whatever they deem to be an authority, whether it's an authority or not, it is wrong. So that could be the government, that could be big pharma, that could be mainstream physics, which isn't a thing. It's just physics. It could be anything, but whatever they deem to be an authority, if they want to rage against that authority, anybody who serves them up a narrative that goes against that perceived authority, they will just believe them implicitly, provided that person can speak with enough technical jargon so as to appear as though they know what they're talking about. They can just be vomiting science speak, and a layperson will say, well, they sound like they know what they're talking about, and I want that to be true, so I believe that. You know what I mean?
It is unfortunate because it's it's not unheard of for specific studies to be funded by specific organizations with specific motives. Like this is a thing that happens a lot in like the health industry, a lot of food industries in general. You see that kind of stuff, and just different interest groups do kind of fund different kinds of, it's usually surveys, but depending on what kind of narrative they want to push, like there are some like there is some crooked science, I guess you can call it. There are people who put on lab coats and say they're doing science, but it's not really science. And so like I understand why people have a distrust sometimes when they say, oh, well, scientists have demonstrated this, because like that can mean a lot if you're just, putting that as a blanket statement. But I am one to think, and maybe you agree with this, that science does play a role in not only how we grow up and learn and become better knowledgeable people, but also in the way that we organize ourselves, in the way that we create policies. I've been thinking a lot about climate change recently and stuff, and there's a lot of stuff that I wish I knew when I was in school that I didn't know until content creators on YouTube taught me, or I read some book that was never given to me by any teacher or professor I ever met. So like, how do you feel about that as someone who like is a part of, kind of outside the public school system or private school system, like providing the supplemental material? Do you feel like it's a good place to be, or would you rather it, the way the world works, would you rather that be different?
I mean, it's great being on YouTube and getting to do whatever I want. That's definitely the case. I mean, I want to sympathize with the public, because when you don't have basic scientific knowledge, it's very, very difficult to sort between truth and falsehood. And I don't want to diminish that sentiment, because I feel that way about like how my car works. You know what I mean? Like if you don't know something, you don't know something. And that's a problem in politics and all these things. But and it's true that there are special interests, but I think that's why the most important thing anybody can do is generate sort of like a baseline scientific understanding. So like, for example, if you know basic chemistry, if you know the basics about what molecules are, what their properties are, and how they behave, then there is a certain percentage of pseudoscience. And honestly, it's a pretty big percentage, 50, 60, 70% of pseudoscience in like the biomedical realm, or somewhere that is adjacent to chemistry, that you can immediately dismiss because it's absolutely preposterous and incompatible with basic chemistry principles. That does leave a small percentage. I mean, the more esoteric it gets, the harder it is. So there can be claims that I see that even with with a strong foundation of chemistry knowledge, that I have to go, that doesn't sound right, but I'm not sure. I got to look into it. But that, if we can just stop out that 70% of just like these ridiculous, claims. I mean, a lot of them are going around right now with like COVID. I mean, if you want to talk about, was the virus manufactured deliberately? Okay, that's a very complicated conversation. But people tell me viruses are not real. What are you talking about? That's the dumbest thing. Like, yes, viruses are real.
Hey, germ theory, Dave, it's just a theory.
Yeah, and then they'll regurgitate. Oh yeah, well, don't get me started on that. The misuse, the colloquial use of the word theory. But I mean, then the problem is when somebody says that, I know for a fact that they went on YouTube and they found somebody like Andrew Kaufman or one of these other people who have no idea what they're talking about, but they speak confidently. Maybe they're wearing a lab coat or something, and they say viruses aren't real. They don't follow. They don't pass Koch's postulates or something, and they don't. And the person watching just absorbs the narrative and the confidence of that presenter, and then they just go and regurgitate that misinformation. Viruses are real. We know for sure they are real. We have pictures of them. We isolate them. We sequence their genomes. We use them in medical technology like gene therapy. Viruses exist. So all I want is for the general public to have the rudimentary understanding of basic scientific principles, that they don't fall for viruses are not real. Let's all not fall for that. Then when we get to the more complex stuff about, okay, well, we sequence the genome and we of COVID-19, and we see that they're very, very complex biochemical research. Then I have a lot more sympathy for people who aren't quite sure which source to trust. but yeah, I just want to help arm people with the basic understanding so that they don't look at something on YouTube by a complete fraud or the, you know, plandemic or these ridiculous propaganda pieces. I want people to be able to look at that and reject it outright and just go, this is ridiculous. Like, these are lies, you know. There's no way about it.
A good foundation in education really does kind of act as almost like a vaccine, if we're going to use that example, towards like bad information. I was lucky enough to, I remember when I first learned about evolution in high school, I had a great teacher that taught me a lot about the basics and stuff. And I was pretty knowledgeable compared to, I'd even say, a lot of people my age still when it comes to evolution. There's people that are still like, oh, how do we come from, we don't come from monkeys, you know, that kind of stuff. And it's like, oh, actually, no, like this is something that I was pretty good at. But like when flat earth became a thing, you know, like I could tell you, oh, like we have satellites and stuff, but like the actual physics behind it, how we proved it at first, it did make me think. I was like, well, I guess I need to know more about how we know this information. What's the methodologies we use to know the size of the earth and know the size of the sun and know the distances and the orbits and stuff, because I didn't have a full grasp of it. I definitely have a better grasp of it now, but it did raise those questions. And if I had even less of a grasp, I could see how that would kind of be like, oh, maybe everybody is lying to us and NASA
literally
is full of shittles.
Everyone in the whole world. Like the sheer magnitude of the conspiracy is like half the population of the world. But that's why flat earth is the funniest and most indefensible one, because anything, like I even have the smallest iota of sympathy for anti-vaxxers, because like, okay, you don't know what a vaccine is. You don't know what the immune system is. Like there is knowledge that there is basic knowledge that you require that you didn't get. But flat earth is the only one that literally, like, looking at objects in the sky and thinking is enough. Like it's so unbelievably incompatible with even the most basic observations that humans were making thousands of years ago. That's how we figured out the earth. We figured out the earth is round before we knew what anything in the sky was. We didn't know what the sun was. We didn't know what the stars were. We didn't know anything. Like, at all, but we still figured out it was round, because you look at the sun rises, stays the same size the whole time, and then sets. Like, put that on a flat earth and make it go like this. It doesn't look like that. It doesn't do that. So like, these are the kinds of things that just make me laugh, and then the degree. But in the end, I think the majority of flat earthers are trolls anyway, and don't. I mean, I think there are a few thousand people that genuinely believe it. But the perpetrators of the hoax are con men, and most of the people commenting are paid trolls. So it's something I don't even waste too much time with anymore, because it's not a thing. But all of these other things that actually influence public perception of science and of the scientific community, these hoaxes that generate distrust, that give the impression to the public that science is hopelessly uncertain or out to get us, or these sorts of narratives, these need to be squashed. These are very dangerous, and they produce things like the American response to the COVID pandemic, which get people killed. I mean, this is the kind of thing that we're dealing with. So flat earth is hilarious. It's good for a laugh, and it's good for a few clicks on YouTube for me, which I'm not, complaining about. But I have a lot bigger fish to fry, and I'm going to jump into a lot of these biomedical topics very soon.
Yeah, that's great. I do like how you talked about, there are a lot of trolls in the flat earth community. I wish more people realize this. Like, I hear this stuff from other skeptics. They're like, oh, flat earthers don't think Australia is real. It's like, no, that's like pretty much entirely a joke. Like,
I mean, there might be like 5 people who believe that.
There might be 5 people, but there are statements that people say about communities like flat earth people that aren't real or aren't true. And I hate it when people do that, because if a flat earther sees that and they see that you're lying about this community, that just fuels them even more to be like, oh, these people are lying about us. They're paid shills, so it's like, I get it. They're wrong, but let's be accurate about their misrepresentations of reality so that we can, properly have these conversations. So like you're talking about, we'll get to calls here in just a second. One more quick question for you, I guess. I want to know, what do you got coming up? Because you said you're talking about some biomedical stuff. What other debunking plans do you have?
So I just put one out today, which hopefully will be the last one in the alternate cosmology realm, because I've done like 4 of them. People have been asking for an anti-vax debunk for a long time, and I've been putting it off. But the thing is that I'm planning immunology content, so I was hoping to just do what I did with astronomy and just cap off the series with vaccine information and address common anti-vax talking points. But I think the problem is much more than that. It's much more urgent than that. I need to like address like specific misinformation and deconstruct specific misinformation. So I definitely want to do. I want to address some more of the like anti-Western medicine sentiment, which fuels kind of like quantum mysticism, and I just want people to understand what medicine is and what drugs are, and why the majority of anti-Western medicine and anti-pharma sentiment is completely misled, and that there are things that you can criticize big pharma about, and they should be talked about, but people don't know what a drug is. People don't know what natural or synthetic means. They think natural means good and synthetic means bad. These kind of misunderstandings regarding basic scientific terminology. People don't know what organic means. People don't know, they're just, I want to address some of this misinformation that really permeates almost the entire general public. That's in a way that is, flat earth. Who do you know that really believes that? But people, I think it's very common that people think natural means good, synthetic means bad.
Yes.
And don't really know what the word synthetic means, and they don't really know what a synthetic organic chemist does, or where the properties of molecules are derived. These kinds of things.
It does bother me. I can drive 5 minutes and go to a CVS and get a homeopathic drug right now, and that's a thing that's available on every drugstore in every corner of the country. It's just, it boggles my mind that that's a thing.
Here's the really alarming thing. So, homeopathy is sort of the poster child of pseudoscience in the medical realm. It is patently absurd. There's zero legitimacy to it, and anyone who knows anything about chemistry can demonstrate that in about a minute. But because of the way that our economy is working, yes, you can find those products in retail and obviously all over the internet. But we are seeing actual like homeopathy programs crop up in academic institutions. Not really the most reputable ones, but there are academic institutions, accredited universities, that offer courses of study in homeopathy. So why are they doing
this? What
do
you study?
Yeah.
What are you looking at? I mean, it's just, how small you can fit the parts per million of the plant in the water? Like, what's
I'm studying dilution for 4 years. But it's like the sheer fact that this area, that the educational realm is bending towards this demand, right? It's just, they're just cashing in. You know what I mean? If somebody wants to pay a certain amount of money for a program, somebody's going to offer the program so they can get the money. But I don't like that money is turning this gear of society. Right? We need the educational sphere to be pure of this. And we have to push back against this. And my role, I want there to be a grander societal response and policy that helps this. But as an individual, all I can do is make content that explains to people why things are wrong. And that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. Me too. And speaking of that, let's get to some calls. But before we do, I would be remiss not to thank. That's how that's phrased, right? Yep. Whatever. I want to thank the patron of the week. Every single week, I shout out a patron who has donated to the Truth Wanted Patreon. And this week's patron is... Rebecca Lynch. Thank you, Rebecca Lynch, for donating. And if you would like to support this awesome show, you can do that at patreon.com/truthwanted. 100% of the money goes towards the show and making it better than it already is. So thank you, Rebecca. And Dave, you ready to get to some calls?
Absolutely.